Welcome to the Culinary Education Center. My name is Michelle Zuppi. I'm the department chair of the Culinary Arts program. Our program is a collaboration between Brookdale Community College and the Monmouth County Vocational School District. Our students earn degrees in culinary and pastry arts with extensive hands-on learning. We would like you to join us while our faculty and students demonstrate a variety of recipes. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Culinary Education Center. My name is Adrienne Longatano. I'm a pastry chef instructor here at the school. Today I'm with Olivia Soul. She's currently a pastry student at the school, and she's going to be demonstrating for you how to make an apple galette. Olivia?
First thing today that we're going to do is assemble the dough for the galette. The first step that we're going to do is combine ice water and sour cream.
Now, a galette dough is a free-form type of a pie. It's not made in a shell. It's done very free-form. It's very rustic looking. And as with any pie dough, the reason that you're using ice water is you don't want to develop a lot of gluten. That would make the pie dough very tough.
So I'm just whisking the sour cream and ice water together. You want to try to get all of the lumps out as much as possible.
And the sour cream's actually going to serve to tenderize the dough as well because of the acidity in it.
So once that's done, you just want to set that aside. And then we're going to move on to our dry ingredients. So what I'm going to do is take some all-purpose flour and put it in a bowl. Got it. Then we have cornmeal, some salt, and sugar. And then I just toss it with a fork and incorporate it together. Until it's all uniform. And then from there, we're going to take our cold butter and we're going to toss it into our dry ingredients just until it's covered. And you want to use cold butter because it'll result in a nice, tender, flaky dough. And then our next step is working the butter into the dry ingredients with our hands. And you want to just rub the butter into the dry ingredients until you have a consistency of small peas or breadcrumbs.
And the reason Olivia is doing that is what she's trying to do is make sort of a raincoat on top of the flour. By rubbing the butter into the flour, it will cause the flour not to absorb a lot of liquid, which means that you won't get a lot of gluten development.
Okay, so just keep working it in.
And she's also not spending a lot of time on one piece of butter because that would cause it to melt. The heat from her fingertips would cause the butter to melt, and you don't want that to happen.
And this is about the consistency that you would want it. As you can see, the butter is incorporated into the dry ingredients, and it's about the size of small peas. And from here, Chef Adrienne is going to help me, and she's going to take a tablespoon of the sour cream and ice water combination and add it in a tablespoon at a time as I incorporate it with a fork.
And we're going to incorporate it around the perimeter of the bowl. It just incorporates a little easier. This dough is going to be very wet, okay? So when you're making it at home, if you feel like it's really too liquid, you did it right. It's really important to do this a little at a time because the mixture can't absorb all of this liquid at once. Okay, so just be patient, do it a little at a time, and you'll have no problem.
You also have more control. If it's becoming too wet, you can stop and you can save the dough.
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on the weather. Sometimes flour absorbs a lot of moisture if it's raining out, so you may need to add a little bit less of the liquid.
Okay, so now that the sour cream and ice water are combined into our dry ingredients, you're just going to take a spatula, roll it out onto a piece of saran wrap, And as you can see, it's a pretty wet, loose dough.
Very wet, but this is right.
So then you're just going to press it together into a disc.
And Olivia's going to flatten it out a little bit because it'll chill easier if it's a little flatter. And ultimately, you're going to roll it out anyway, so you might as well have it as flat as possible. This now needs to rest in the refrigerator for approximately 2 hours before we can roll it out.
Now I'm going to be making the apple filling for our apple galette. Here we have one apple, thinly sliced, and I strained it. I had the apple in a little bit of cold water with lemon. That prevents the fruit from browning, which you don't want. So from there, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of brown sugar into the apples. And you just want to mix them together.
And we're using light brown sugar. You could use dark brown sugar if you prefer. If you have no brown sugar, you can make your own. You can take granulated sugar and add a little bit of molasses to it.
So once the brown sugar is mixed in with the apples, you're just going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon.
Now this quantity of apples, it was 1 Granny Smith apple. That's enough to make approximately 2 4-inch galettes. That's about the size we're going to be doing.
And the sugar actually activates the juices in the apple, so you'll get a nice, juicy filling. So once that's all mixed, you just set that to the side. And we're going to move on to our streusel. Can I have a bowl, please? Thank you. So for our streusel filling, we have about 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, about 1 cup of brown sugar,
Your cinnamon.
and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. With a spoon, you just want to mix together and incorporate those all together. You can also do this streusel topping in a mixer if you would like to do that, or you can do it by hand. So once that's all mixed, we're going to cut in our butter, much like we did with the tart dough.
This time the butter is a little bit on the softer side.
Just going to work it in.
So she's coating the butter with the dry ingredients, much like she did with the galette dough. This is going to be a very pasty kind of combination, and then we're going to pick pieces of it off to make nice big crumb topping for the galette.
It'll almost look like when you cream brown sugar or sugar with butter when you make cookies or anything else like that. So it'll be nice and creamy.
If you want to, you can add oats to this. You could add some chopped nuts to it, craisins if you like, just to jazz it up a little bit. And this keeps very well, so if you have extra streusel, you could just store it in the refrigerator. The galette dough also keeps very well. It freezes well, so if you don't want to make all the dough at once, you can save it for future.
Okay, so this is starting to come together. As you can see, if I press, you get a nice clump of it.
Okay, that's looking good.
Okay, so that's our streusel topping.
Okay, now we had our dough in the refrigerator for about 2 hours, and now Olivia's going to show you how to roll it out. What you want to do is you want to soften it up a little bit because it is rather cold. You don't want to knead it, but you do want to soften it up. So Olivia's going to start with a little bit of bench flour on the tabletop. You don't want to flour too much.
You don't want too much gluten development. You want a nice tender crust.
Okay?
Okay, I have a little bit more bench flour.
There you go.
I like to sprinkle just a little bit more on the top of the dough. That way the rolling pin doesn't tend to stick to the dough, which is not what you want. And in rolling out, you want to keep a circle. So you're going to go in one direction, and then you're going to turn it. And that also, the dough won't stick to the bench or your countertop.
And you'll notice when she's rolling out, she's going straight out with the rolling pin. She's not going over the edge. That will cause the edges to be much thinner than the center if you do that. So she's just rolling straight out.
And if it starts to stick, just little bits of flour at a time will prevent that.
And the key is, as she's mentioned, to just keep turning the dough. You want to roll this to about 1/8 of an inch thick. And whatever scraps you have left, it's best to take those scraps, and when you go to roll out your next piece of dough, add the scraps to the fresh dough. That way you're always ensured that you're not going to end up with a dough that's very tough. If you keep re-rolling scrap after scrap, eventually the dough is going to be very tough. Okay, one more turn and I think you've got it.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
Now
here's your
from
cutter.
there, we're just going to take our cutter, just firmly cut out your individually sized Galette tarts. Peel away the dough.
You got it. I'll take the scrap from you. Thank you.
There you go. Just place them on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper.
And now she's going to show you how to assemble the tart with the filling and the streusel.
So Chef Adrian said before, the galette is by nature a very free-form tart. So this is a very easy assembling line. You just want to take a spoonful of your apple filling and place it in the middle of your tart.
And you can make these savory as well. You could use tomatoes and mozzarella cheese and some basil. The dough lends itself very well to that. You could do roasted vegetables with some balsamic vinegar and some olive oil, pears, berries. So there's lots of different combinations that you can do.
Okay, so we have our apples in our tart dough, and then we're going to fold up the edges and kind of pleat them so they come up the sides of the tart. So they'll come up the sides of the apple.
And she's going to try to leave the center exposed a little bit because you actually do want to see the filling.
And you can adjust it. Again, it's very free form and rustic.
Very rustic.
And that's-
There you go.
So there's one.
You also don't need a cutter. You could just take a knife or a pizza cutter and make a very free-form circle. You could actually use that entire piece of dough that we made to make one big tart. You can make them a little bigger, a little smaller, whatever you like.
So once we have the apples in the tart and we folded up the dough on the sides, we're going to take our streusel topping. You just want to take a piece and then just sprinkle it right on top. And now they're ready to go in the oven. Now, because these are smaller, we're going to put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. You can do galettes in any size that you like. They're done when the crust is nice and golden brown and the juices of the fruit are bubbling. And here's our finished galette.
And it's best to serve this warm.
Just going to place it. And then you can just dust it with a little bit of confectioner's sugar.
Thank you for joining us today at the Culinary Education Center. Please stay tuned for more of our recipes.
I live my dream every day working in my own restaurant. It's great waking up every day, coming to a job I love and seeing, getting an immediate response from people. Probably wouldn't have got that without my start at Brookdale. The Culinary Education Center at Brookdale was great to me because it taught me the basic skills I needed to pursue a career in the industry that I love, which eventually led to me opening my own restaurant. Each year we've continued to grow, added staff members. I'm proud to say all of which are either graduates or students of Brookdale's Culinary Education Center. I've also been fortunate enough to be nominated twice for James Beard Award, Best Chef Mid-Atlantic. Brookdale's easy, it's accessible, it's right in your own backyard. Course times are all varied, you could always fit it in your schedule. You have no reason not to go. My name's Andrew Aranio, owner of Drew's Bayshore Bistro Keyport, and I got my start at Brookdale.
Tonight, Aaron's going to make one of our special desserts here at the Windows Dining Room, our Bananas Foster. Bananas Foster was developed by Brennan's Restaurant down in New Orleans. It's caramelized butter and rum sauce, and it's a flambe. These students, this is their third dining room class. In their third class, they do tableside cooking. Just going to start by melting the butter. Adding brown sugar. Tableside cooking is a classic presentation. Many of the best restaurants, especially in France, still use tableside cooking to this day. Aaron is taking the banana, placing it in the pan. And allowing the banana to cook in the butter and brown sugar mixture. Next is a little banana liqueur, creme de banane. She's heating the pan so the alcoholic vapors will ignite. Now she adds dark rum off the heat. And now the flambe part. A little cinnamon, create some fireworks. Serve over vanilla ice cream. And you can't forget the delicious sauce.
Welcome to the Culinary Education Center. My name is Adrienne Longatano. I'm a chef instructor at the school. And here with me today is Kate Wood. She is currently in our pastry arts program. And she's going to demonstrate for you how to dip various fruits in ganache and Nutella. Kate?
First, what we're going to do is we're going to melt our bittersweet chocolate to approximately 90 degrees, and then we're going to scald our cream. Ganache is equal parts chocolate and cream. So you have 8 ounces of chocolate, you're going to have 8 ounces of cream. And we're going to scald that until it has very small bubbles on the outside of our pan here. Once we get the bubbles started, we're going to intermix the two.
You can pass me the chocolate. Perfect.
Now, with equal parts of the chocolate and the cream, we're going to add 1 ounce of butter to the combined mixture.
And traditionally, the way ganache is made is by chopping the chocolate finely, usually it's bittersweet chocolate, and pouring hot cream over that chopped chocolate. You let it melt a little bit and then you combine it. That's one way to do it. We're doing it slightly differently because you'll get a better emulsion this way. Both the chocolate and the cream will be at the same temperature, so the emulsion will be stronger. So you don't want to boil the cream and you don't want to overheat the chocolate, otherwise the ganache is going to break. which means that when you go to glaze something after it sets up in the refrigerator, you may see the chocolate set up on the bottom layer and a butter layer set up on top of that, and that means that something in your ingredients was too hot and your emulsion is not stable. So then you have to start all over again.
This is starting to bubble, so what we're going to do is take it off. We're going to slowly add it to the chocolate.
You want to gently whisk this. I don't want to incorporate a lot of air, because when you go to glaze something, for example, you'll see all those little air bubbles in there, and it's not very appealing, although it still tastes good.
And as you're mixing, it does look very watery, but it will come together. You just have to be patient.
Okay, so right now this looks almost like chocolate milk, and it's on its way to looking like Hershey's syrup. So you can see how it's darkening in the center.
Then we're going to add the softened butter.
It's really important that the butter be soft, because the last thing you want to happen is to put the butter in here and it doesn't incorporate, and then you have to put the whole thing back on the heat, and you're going to end up overheating this, and again, you may end up breaking the ganache. Okay, that looks good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You could basically dip anything into this. We're going to start with the grapes, and they're just on a toothpick. And you're just going to spin them in the chocolate. Now what you want to do with these is you want to turn them every couple of seconds until it's dry, so you don't get the foot on the bottom.
So just move it from one spot to another. Anything you dip, you should do that with, so you don't get that
Same
foot.
with the strawberries. And then we have some other options over here. We have the cocoa nibs, which are basically unsweetened chocolate, shelled and roasted. Then we also have the chopped pistachios and toasted coconut.
When you go to chop any sort of nut in the food processor, if you want it finely chopped, you need to add a little bit of sugar to it, because the oil from the nut is going to start to come out. And if you over process that, you're going to end up with nut paste. So if you add a little sugar, the sugar will absorb some of that moisture.
Turn those so they're not getting the foot.
Make sure your fruit is completely dry. If there's any bit of water on there, it's going to cause the ganache to slide off of the fruit.
Now with drying your fruit, you can also use cantaloupe, and what I did is use a tear-shaped cutter. And what we added to that is a lollipop stick. That's another alternative to dipping the fruit. And if you wanted to add some of the grapes with the cocoa nibs. Turn those as well. Another alternative to using ganache, we can also use Nutella, which is a chocolate hazelnut spread. And what we're going to do is we're going to heat that over a double boiler, which is water on the bottom to a boil, and the Nutella on the top.
Now, you may think that you can automatically just melt Nutella because it's chocolate. It turns out you need to add a little bit of liquid to it, and it's best to do that over a double boiler rather than a microwave.
And then if you add a little bit of water, not too much, if you put too much water in, it will seize. And you would dip it exactly the way you did the ganache. And the ground pistachio. And you could basically use any fruit or anything that you would like to dip in either of these, Nutella or the ganache. This is what you could use.
Thank you for joining us today at the Culinary Education Center. Please stay tuned for more of our recipes.